Usually, I do 3 segments on the show. Very rarely, since I've been doing this show, I've done 4 segments just once, and today is going to be the second time because yesterday was the 17th of January, and it marked 64 years since the assassination of Patrice Lumumba of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Usually, I don't really talk about anniversaries of assassination because we have a lot to discuss, but I want to discuss Patrice Lumumba because of this statement I made in the last segment, and that is that the anti-imperialist sentiment is growing across Africa. While we're happy and we're excited about the turn of things in Africa and how, for the first time in centuries, Africa can really become sovereign, while we're excited about that, let's not forget Patrice Lumumba should be a reminder that the fight against imperialism is very dangerous and it can be fatal. They did not end 64 years ago when they assassinated him. It didn't end. For those of you who don't know, Patrice Lumumba was the first prime minister of the DRC, that Democratic Republic of Congo, and he was one of the freedom fighters who took their time, their lives, everything, dedicated themselves to the liberation of the African people from colonization. He was one of the people, those who are at the forefront of that, and he was a Pan-Africanist. Now, we found out after the classification of certain CIA documents, we found out that the Americans, the British, and Belgium, they had been plotting his assassination even before the independence of the DRC. Because I believe that back then, the way it was around, though, when the Europeans were leaving, they left the country under the governance of puppets. So because of Lumumba's rhetoric during in the fight against colonization, they didn't want Belgium, Americans and the British, they didn't want to leave the DRC in his hand because if they left it under his control, he was going to completely turn the country on a path they didn't want the country to go on. So they were plotting his assassination even before independence, but it didn't happen until after the independence of the DRC, so-called independence of the DRC. They hated him so much that this same CIA, the classified CIA documents showed that the then director of CIA said that Lumumba was worse than Castro. If you know Fidel Castro and the CIA, you know they hated they hated Castro. They tried to assassinate. They did everything to assassinate Castro of Cuba. They hated him. They did. But the CIA director of CIA once said that Lumumba, for him, in his opinion, was worse than Castro. Why? Because I'm guessing now, you cannot compare the resources that the DRC is sitting on to the resources that Cuba is sitting on. For them, losing the DRC was magnitude worse than anything Castro could have unleashed in Cuba. They used media to do assassination campaign against Lumumba. One of the things they did, they branded him a commie, a communist. Because back then, the whole craze in the world was, oh, communism is bad, communism, oh, the communists are coming, all of that. So they wanted to sell that pill to us. They had really done it to them in the United States. That's why several times, even when you follow US media, you still hear reference to communism because they had so demonized communism. I'm not saying communism is good or bad. That's not my business. That's not the discussion. But they had so propagandized the people with communism that they just used that same paint to paint it over Lumumba to make him, oh, look at him, he's a scary fellow. But who was Lumumba? Was he really scary? No, he wasn't. All he was saying was we should have independence in the DRC to decide a future. The same thing that is enshrined in the United Nations Charter that countries should have self governance. But self governance, I believe, so far has just been in mere words. If you look, when people really say, since we're talking about in the context of Africa, when we really say we really want self governance, they go out of their way to assassinate the leaders who are calling for real self governance, which is sovereignty. So all Lumumba was clamoring for was independence and full control of the resources of DRC to benefit the people of DRC. This is not a complicated stance. How is it that in Africa, the resources of Africa go on to benefit and make other people rich, except the Africans? People always ask, why do we have so much wealth in resources and people in Africa, but we still have such poverty? It's neo-colonialism. That's the problem. So all Lumumba was saying was, let us use the resources of the DRC to take care of the people of the DRC, which is a noble stance because the resources of the United States are put into the same country. They're put into the same country. Norway was really, really poor, was like backwater poor. Norway in Europe was backwater poor. That many Norwegians they had to immigrate. Many of them left, they ran away from the country because it was poor, and many of them live in the United States. Many people of Norwegian descent relocated to the United States because of the poverty in Norway. But what turned Norway around? When Norway found its oil and gas reserves. That's it. They used the resources of Norway to benefit the people of Norway. So why is it that when it comes to using the resources of Africa to benefit the people of Africa, it's a controversial stance? Imperialism. That is your answer. Imperialism. So 64 years ago, the outsiders who were so happy to leave Africa in perpetual poverty and exploit the resources of Africa. They worked with insiders. Never forget that. In our fight against imperialism in Africa, do not forget that there will always be people in Africa, like anywhere in the world, who are going to work with outsiders to sabotage their country. Don't forget that. So, compromised individuals within the DRC worked with the CIA, the British intelligence, and Belgium and other nefarious players to bring down Lumumba. Lumumba, as well as two other of his associates, were arrested and they were killed at a firing squad. After killing Lumumba and his associates, they were chopped up, they were hacked in pieces and dissolved in sulfuric acid. It was bad enough that they killed him. They wanted to even in death, they wanted to ridicule him and the idea of anti-imperialism in Africa. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. It was not, if it was just about getting him out, they would have just killed him and looked away. But they wanted to send a warning to any other person within the continent who wanted to have far-fetched dreams of sovereignty and using your resources to benefit your country. So they shot them at the firing squad. They hacked them to pieces and they dissolved their body in sulfuric acid. Then Belgium took his teeth as souvenir. They took his teeth as souvenir. I need you to understand the brutality of imperialism. This fight that we are saying we are going on in Africa is not a small thing. Understand the brutality of imperialism. When it perceives a threat to itself, it would rear its fangs. Over the years, you've been seeing, I don't want to call names, but you've been seeing certain people posture and say human rights and all of those nice words. So many people will think, oh, they are really nice players. But look beyond the facade and look beyond the empty walls, scratch the surface, and they rear their ugly fangs. They rear their ugly fangs. Imperialism is not a nice game. It's not. It's not. Once they perceive something as a threat, that is when you see. Look at when they perceived Gaddafi as a threat. What did you see? The same people who will scream human rights, they used their media. They lied. They did character assassination against Gaddafi. They did everything and went in. In the one of the most inhumane and disastrous ways. They assassinated Gaddafi. And look at Libya today. What is going on in Libya? Is it human rights? Is it in accordance to the laws of human rights? Is it? The selling of slaves in open air slave markets in Libya. Does that look like human rights? Because they never cared about human rights to begin with. They never cared. In 2021, Belgium returned the teeth of Patrice Lumumba. When I saw that news, that I didn't know how to feel about it. I didn't know, is it the taking of the teeth or the returning of the teeth that is the insult? Like, do you understand me? Because why did you take the souvenir? Then what are we doing using the teeth to do? That was after 60, was it 60? Yeah, after 60 years. What are we using the teeth to do? But they returned it. They returned it. Today, after 64 years, the Democratic Republic of Congo is still poor. Today, after 64 years, the Democratic Republic of Congo is in an ongoing conflict that have ravaged the nation. Many times we talk about Sudan, and rightly so. But even as we are screaming about Sudan, there's fire burning in the DRC. But in the midst of this fire, corporations are going in to continue the exploitation of the country, collecting the resources. And it looks like the president doesn't have power to stop it. The leadership in the DRC, they don't have power to stop it. Rebel groups, armed rebel groups all over the place in DRC, causing chaos. Today, after 64 years, the exploitation of the DRC continued, as if it's trying to be a spit in the memory of Patrice Lumumba, that any idea of sovereignty for the DRC or for any African country, and any idea of using the DRC's resources to make the country rich, or even any African country, any of such ideas are doomed to failure. That is why after 64 years, the thing Lumumba was fighting against many decades ago are still happening till today. I'm not saying this to break your spirits. No. I'm saying this so that you know that the fight against imperialism is not a walk in the park. We have come out together to say we are going to set up, we are going to start to fight for the liberation and the sovereignty of Africa by creating an African media movement focused on enlightening Africans on its geopolitical economic interests. It's not going to be a walk in the park. The bigger we grow, the more formidable our voice becomes, the more attention we get, we are going to get backlash. The imperialists are not going to say, oh, Africa wants to be free and Africa wants to be sovereign, so let's allow them, and they'll walk away. They're not going to walk away. We are going to have to wrestle Africa out of their grip. We're going to have to wrestle Africa out of their grip. So when we are moving with Ukweli, this is our African media movement that I've said, let us get this done. Like in case you didn't know, I titled it Ukweli. Once we are moving with Ukweli, let us keep in mind that we are up against a very formidable foe. A very formidable foe. Because they would rather have Africa stay as just a place to collect raw materials, natural resources and go. Africa is not good enough for refining the resources in the country. That is why our crude oil is taken over there, refined there, and sold back to us. And when Dangote said, let us set up a refinery here to refine our crude oil, fight. Till today, Dangote is still buying crude oil outside Nigeria. As we speak, Dangote is still buying crude oil from outside Nigeria. It's not an easy task, but we are going to win. Why are we going to win? Because you cannot keep a continent of billions of people under your thumb for so long, especially in such a climate where information can spread quickly. I'm here in Nigeria recording, and once I publish this, you're watching me in Ghana, you're watching me in South Africa, you're watching me in the United States, you're watching me in the United Kingdom, you're watching me in Botswana, like this in an instance. When they gave us the show of um, independence and an end to colonialism in the 1950s and in the 1960s, we didn't have such fast spread of information. We didn't have it. So the information we got was the information that was filtered through their media. So they told us what they wanted us to know. But now we can give raw and unadulterated information for Africans to use and run. Take the information and run with it. That is why you could see a hero's welcome of Ibrahim Traore in Ghana. Interestingly, when Ibrahim Traore was in Ghana and we saw such a welcome of him, the BBC covered that story. And the headline of the BBC was Gun Threatening Leader, something like raises concern. If you did not see the video, you would have thought that the people who were there looked at Ibrahim Traore like, oh my God, why is he carrying a gun? Oh my God, this guy is like, is a rascal. He's not refined. He's not civilized. That's what you would have thought if you had read the BBC's coverage of that event. But thank God we all saw the event and we all saw the way people were clamoring and everybody was happy. They put a community note on that BBC's story because it was misleading. That's the point. Why did I say it? That is how, before now, where information can spread quickly, that is the way they filtered information to give to us. They told us what they wanted us to know. So, in our fight against imperialism, it's not going to be rosy, but we are going to win because the situation on ground favors us. The situation on ground, the way things are in Africa, favors us. So, maybe, just maybe, for the first time in 500 years, we are going to see the complete and absolute liberation and sovereignty of the African people. I'm excited about this future. I'm so excited about it. Let me know what you think about the legacy of Patrice Lumumba in the comment section below. Share your thoughts with me about even the future of Africa as we are seeing this rise in anti-imperialism sentiment across the continent. Share your thoughts with me in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everybody around you so that we can amplify Africa's voice and push the African narrative on the global scale. And remember that Ukweli is live. Yes, our African media movement is live. If you want to lend your voice to raising awareness for Africa and informing Africans of its geopolitical and economic interest in the multipolar world, join me on Ukweli by signing up in the comment section. The link is in the description below. Sign up with that link. I'm also going to leave it on the screen. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of The Amanda Show. I had a great time, and I trust you had a great time too. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.